Imagine a single night that changes not just your name, but your destiny and the fate of an entire nation. Jacob's midnight wrestle with the divine holds secrets about resilience, identity, and promises that span centuries. Stay with us as we unravel the story of how this ancient struggle shaped history and why its lessons are more relevant today than ever. The night was cold and silent as Jacob stood by the Jabbok River, reflecting on his life of struggles and promises. Suddenly, a divine figure appeared, glowing with an unearthly light. Jacob instinctively wrestled the stranger, his determination to seek a blessing driving him beyond exhaustion. Hours passed as the two grappled, Jacob's strength nearly failing. As dawn broke, the figure, revealing itself as an angel, declared, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and humans and have prevailed." This divine encounter symbolized a covenant, not just with Jacob, but with his descendants, the future tribes of Israel. From this moment, Jacob's destiny shifted, and his sons would carry the weight of a divine promise. Jacob's later years were filled with the bustling life of a large family. Sitting in his tent, he called his 12 sons Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and the rest to deliver his final blessings. Each son listened attentively, knowing these words carried prophetic weight. Jacob described Reuben's lost preeminence, Judah's future kingship, and Joseph's faithfulness. These blessings foreshadowed the tribe's destinies, ranging from Issachar's burden of labor to Zebulun's maritime successes. As Jacob's voice echoed within the humble tent, the sons realized they were bound not only by blood, but by a covenant that would define nations. Their father's words laid the spiritual and political foundation for the tribes that would shape history. Centuries later, the Israelites stood on the verge of entering the Promised Land under Joshua's leadership. After years of wandering in the desert, their journey culminated in the division of the land among the tribes. Joshua, holding the sacred scrolls of Moses, meticulously assigned territories. Levi's descendants, dedicated to priesthood, received cities rather than land, while Joseph's legacy extended through Ephraim and Manasseh. The land's diversity from fertile plains to rugged hills symbolized the unique destinies of each tribe. Joshua's solemn words reminded them of their covenant with God, to honor the laws and protect their inheritance. This monumental event fulfilled promises made centuries before, marking the tribe's establishment in history. Among the 12 tribes, the Levites held a distinct role. Chosen as priests, they carried the Ark of the Covenant and maintained the tabernacle, ensuring God's presence among his people. Though they received no land inheritance, their cities dotted the Promised Land, signifying their omnipresent spiritual leadership. Their garments, adorned with the breastplate of judgment and golden bells, symbolized their unique relationship with the divine. Rituals performed by the Levites connected the Israelites to God's covenant, offering atonement and guidance. Their sacred duties bound them to a higher purpose, creating a legacy of devotion that spanned generations. As Jacob's life neared its end, Joseph brought his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, to receive their grandfather's blessing. Jacob, frail but filled with spiritual clarity, crossed his arms to place his right hand on Ephraim, the younger, and his left on Manasseh, the firstborn. Joseph protested, but Jacob insisted, foreseeing Ephraim's future prominence. By adopting the boys as his own, Jacob ensured Joseph's double portion of inheritance. This act elevated Ephraim and Manasseh to equal status with Jacob's other sons, marking them as distinct tribes within Israel. Jacob's prophetic words would shape the tribes' roles in the unfolding history of God's people. Judah's leadership began to emerge as the tribes settled into their lands. Prophesied to wield the scepter, Judah's lineage carried the promise of kingship and the coming Messiah. The tribe grew strong, with its land encompassing Jerusalem, the spiritual and political heart of Israel. From David's victory over Goliath to Solomon's reign of wisdom and splendor, Judah's influence extended far beyond its borders. Yet, the tribe faced its share of trials and internal divisions, external invasions, and moral failings. Despite these struggles, Judah's destiny remained intact, serving as the foundation for God's redemptive plan. After Solomon's death, the unified kingdom fractured. His son Rehoboam's harsh policies alienated the northern tribes, leading to their secession. The northern tribes formed the kingdom of Israel under Jeroboam, while Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam, forming the kingdom of Judah. This division weakened the once mighty nation, leaving both kingdoms vulnerable to external threats. Prophets arose, warning of the consequences of disobedience, but their words often fell on deaf ears. The division of the kingdom marked the beginning of a tumultuous era, one defined by idolatry, political intrigue, and the looming shadow of foreign empires. In 722 BC, the Assyrian Empire descended upon the northern kingdom of Israel with unmatched brutality. The once thriving tribes were overwhelmed by the invaders' superior military force, cities burned, and the population was either killed or deported. The Assyrians scattered the Israelites across their empire, breaking their unity and diluting their identity. The tribes of Reuben, Gad, and others that once stood tall among the hills and plains now found themselves as strangers in foreign lands. Amidst the ashes of their homeland, a few faithful clung to their heritage, but the northern kingdom as a cohesive entity ceased to exist. Following the Assyrian conquest, the Israelites were dispersed throughout the empire. In cities like Nineveh and Babylon, they adapted to foreign customs while preserving elements of their identity. Synagogues became centers of learning and worship, where ancient scrolls were read and traditions passed down. However, isolation and intermarriage led many to lose touch with their roots. Legends emerged of tribes migrating to distant lands, from the Danube River to the edges of Asia. Though scattered, the spirit of Israel endured in the hearts of a faithful remnant who believed in the promise of restoration and returned to their homeland. Stories of the lost tribes began to spread, weaving mystery into their disappearance. Some claimed they migrated far west, reaching Europe and even Britain. The Danube River was said to bear the name of the tribe of Dan, and British Israelism later declared Anglo-Saxons as descendants of these tribes. Others believed the tribes traveled eastward, assimilating into cultures as far as India, Ethiopia, and Japan. These legends often mixed fact and fiction, yet they reflected humanity's longing for connection with the ancient covenant. Across continents, communities emerged, each asserting ties to the tribes, adding to the lore and deepening the mystery surrounding the fate of the northern kingdom. While the northern kingdom disintegrated, Judah held on. Surrounded by enemies, they fortified their cities and clung to their heritage. Prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah warned of complacency and idolatry, urging repentance. Despite these warnings, Judah suffered its own spiritual decline. Yet, within the darkness, Judah nurtured the seeds of hope. The lineage of David remained intact, and Jerusalem's temple continued to serve as a beacon for the faithful. The tribe endured cycles of reform and rebellion, its survival resting on a remnant committed to God's covenant and the promise of a Messiah. In 586 BC, Babylon besieged Jerusalem, marking the fall of Judah. The city's walls crumbled, and the temple, once a symbol of God's presence, was reduced to ashes. The tribes of Judah and Benjamin were exiled to Babylon, joining remnants of the northern tribes already scattered. In exile, the Israelites faced an existential crisis, cut off from their land and temple. However, the period also became one of spiritual awakening. Synagogues flourished, and scribes began compiling scriptures, ensuring the survival of their heritage. Though displaced, their identity as God's people endured, awaiting the day they could return to the promised land. In Babylon, the Israelites began to rebuild their community. Leaders like Daniel and Ezekiel rose, offering guidance and visions of hope. Daniel, serving in the Babylonian court, demonstrated unwavering faith, even when faced with persecution. Ezekiel's visions inspired the exiles, foretelling the restoration of Israel. The Israelites adapted to life in exile, integrating into Babylonian society while preserving their unique identity. The loss of the temple shifted focus to the Torah, which became the cornerstone of worship and study. This period laid the foundation for a resilient faith, proving that their covenant with God could endure even in foreign lands. In 538 BC, King Cyrus of Persia issued a decree allowing the Israelites to return to their homeland. The first wave of exiles, led by Zerubbabel, journeyed back with dreams of rebuilding the temple. The return was bittersweet. Jerusalem lay in ruins, and the land was a shadow of its former glory. Despite opposition from surrounding peoples, the Israelites began reconstructing their city and temple. The book of Ezra records their struggles and triumphs, highlighting their determination to restore their covenant with God. This return marked the fulfillment of prophetic promises, signaling a new chapter in the history of the tribes of Israel. Upon their return, the Israelites faced the daunting task of rebuilding the temple. Under the leadership of Zerubbabel and later Ezra and Nehemiah, construction began amid external threats and internal conflicts. The new temple, though less grand than Solomon's, became a symbol of renewed devotion. The sound of hammers and chisels echoed through the city as elders wept, remembering the glory of the first temple. The younger generation, however, saw the structure as a fresh start. This pivotal moment underscored the resilience of the tribes, proving that their faith could endure even after exile and destruction. Here's a question for you. If you were standing in Jacob's place by the Jabbok River, knowing what was at stake, would you have held on until dawn for a blessing? Let us know in the comments what you think you would have done: fought, fled, or surrendered. As the returning exiles settled in the land, remnants of the northern tribes began to merge with Judah. While many of the 10 tribes had been scattered or assimilated, some had preserved their heritage. Families from Issachar, Zebulun, and Asher reappeared, reintegrating into the community. This unification was not without tension. Centuries of separation had fostered different customs and dialects. Despite these differences, the shared goal of rebuilding Jerusalem and restoring worship at the temple brought them together. Ezra and Nehemiah emphasized obedience to the Torah, laying the foundation for a cohesive identity. The gradual reintegration of the tribes signaled that the covenant was alive and inclusive, even after generations of division and exile. As centuries passed, the land of Israel fell under the control of empires like Persia and Greece. The Hellenistic era brought a wave of cultural influence, challenging the Israelites' identity. Greek customs, language, and philosophy infiltrated their society, dividing the people. The Maccabean revolt arose as a fierce response to this cultural encroachment. Under leaders like Judah Maccabee, the Israelites fought to preserve their faith, ultimately reclaiming and rededicating the temple in Jerusalem. The tribes, though scattered and fragmented, rallied together in this moment of resistance, showcasing their enduring commitment to the covenant. By the time Rome conquered Judea, the tribes had become indistinct, with their identities absorbed into the broader Jewish population. Roman rule brought oppressive taxes, religious restrictions, and eventual rebellion. The destruction of the Second Temple in AD 70 marked a catastrophic turning point. The Jewish people were exiled once again, scattering across the Roman Empire and beyond. While the names of individual tribes faded from memory, their legacy lived on in Jewish synagogues, traditions, and messianic hope. This global diaspora set the stage for a dispersed yet resilient people, whose tribal origins still lingered in their collective consciousness. As the Jewish people settled in distant lands, memories of the 12 tribes persisted. Communities in Europe, Africa, and Asia claimed descent from tribes like Dan, Naphtali, and Levi. Ethiopian Jews, known as Beta Israel, traced their lineage to the tribe of Dan, preserving ancient rituals and traditions. In India, the Bene Israel maintained customs reminiscent of Israelite practices, asserting their connection to the lost tribes. These diasporic identities varied, yet they underscored the universal longing for belonging and the enduring influence of the tribal legacy. The 12 tribes, though seemingly lost, continued to inspire and shape Jewish identity across the centuries. Despite their scattered state, The prophetic writings of Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah kept alive the hope of restoration. Ezekiel's vision of the Valley of Dry Bones symbolized the rebirth of Israel, where the scattered tribes would reunite. Isaiah's prophecy spoke of a servant who would gather the exiles and restore them to their land. These promises resonated deeply during times of persecution, offering assurance that God had not forgotten his covenant. The prophets envisioned a future where the 12 tribes would stand together once more, fulfilling their divine purpose in a renewed relationship with God. With the arrival of Jesus Christ, the role of the tribes took on a new dimension. As a descendant of Judah, Jesus fulfilled the prophecy of the scepter never departing from the tribe. His ministry transcended tribal divisions, calling the scattered children of Israel and all nations to a renewed covenant. The apostles, hailing from different parts of Judea and Galilee, embodied the diversity of Israel's heritage. Jesus promised to his disciples that they would judge the 12 tribes in his kingdom, revive the hope of restoration. His message resonated across centuries, uniting the spiritual legacy of the tribes under the banner of salvation. The book of Revelation unveils a future where 144,000 witnesses, 12,000 from each tribe, are sealed by God during the tribulation. This vision highlights the enduring presence of the tribes in God's plan. Though their earthly identities seem obscured, God's knowledge of their lineage remains perfect. These witnesses, marked with divine protection, proclaim the gospel in the face of global upheaval. The inclusion of Levi and the absence of Dan among the sealed tribes raises questions, adding intrigue to the prophetic narrative. This moment underscores the eternal relevance of the tribes, uniting their history with humanity's ultimate destiny. In the modern era, various groups claim descent from the lost tribes. The Beta Israel community in Ethiopia points to ancient texts linking them to Dan. The Bene Israel in India and Pashtun tribes in Afghanistan assert connections to the tribes of Zebulun and Ephraim. Meanwhile, Lemba people in Africa cite DNA evidence supporting ties to the priestly tribe of Levi. These claims, often entwined with local traditions, reflect the tribe's widespread influence. While some theories lack concrete proof, they illustrate the enduring fascination with Israel's ancient heritage. Across the globe, these communities contribute to the rich tapestry of Jewish identity and the legacy of the tribes. The establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948 reignited interest in the 12 tribes. Scholars and religious leaders began to explore how the tribal identities might be preserved or reclaimed. While the tribes as political entities no longer exist, their legacy influences the Israeli national ethos. The desire to rebuild the temple and reestablish ancient practices reflects a longing for a more unified connection to the past. Among religious communities, discussions about the tribes remain vibrant, focusing on their spiritual significance and their role in prophecy. The tribes, though fragmented, remain a cornerstone of Israel's history and its vision for the future. Among the 12 tribes, Dan's absence from the list of sealed tribes in Revelation sparks debate. Historically, Dan was associated with idolatry, erecting a golden calf in the northern kingdom. This reputation may explain its omission from the prophetic vision. Yet, Dan's legacy remains influential, particularly through the Samson narrative, which highlights both strength and moral failure. Some theorists suggest that Dan's lineage persists in mysterious ways, perhaps linked to migratory legends. Others see its exclusion as a cautionary tale about the consequences of straying from the covenant. Dan's story, though incomplete, adds depth to the mystery of the tribe's fate. The prophets envision a time when the tribes will reunite in the Messianic kingdom. Ezekiel's vision of the restored land includes detailed descriptions of tribal boundaries, with each tribe receiving its inheritance. Jerusalem will serve as the spiritual and political center, uniting the tribes in worship and governance. This vision symbolizes the fulfillment of God's promises, where all nations are drawn to the glory of Israel. The Messianic age is not just a return to the past, but a transformation, where the tribes achieve their ultimate purpose as stewards of divine justice and peace. The dream of unity, once broken, will be fully realized. The 12 tribes of Israel, though dispersed and integrated into history, continue to play a spiritual role in the unfolding of God's plan. Their stories are etched into the foundation of Jewish identity, Christian theology, and world history. The promises given to Jacob's sons endure, not just in the material realms of land and heritage, but in the spiritual essence. They represent faith, redemption, and unity under God. Whether through the preserved practices of the Jewish people or the eschatological visions of the Bible, the tribes symbolize the endurance of God's covenant. Their legacy serves as a beacon, reminding humanity of divine faithfulness and the unbroken link between past, present, and future. Advances in genealogy and DNA technology have renewed interest in the tribes. Researchers have uncovered genetic markers linked to ancient Israelite populations, providing a scientific basis for some claims of descent. Jewish communities worldwide have embraced these discoveries, connecting their modern identities with ancient traditions. While the science is complex, the implications are profound, as they bridge millennia of separation and reinforce the shared heritage of the tribes. This exploration of identity deepens the spiritual and cultural bonds that have sustained the Jewish people through centuries of diaspora and adversity. The story of the lost tribes teaches profound lessons about resilience, faith, and the enduring power of identity. Scattered across the world, the tribes embody the strength to survive adversity while retaining a core connection to their roots. Their narrative warns of the consequences of disobedience, yet celebrates the promise of redemption. Through their struggles and triumphs, the tribes mirror humanity's own journey of faith, exile, and return. By studying their history, we are reminded of the universal truths that bind us, the importance of community, the value of perseverance, and the enduring hope for restoration and unity under a higher purpose. In the final chapters of the Bible, the 12 tribes reappear as part of the New Jerusalem, a city with 12 gates bearing their names. This vision represents the ultimate restoration, where the tribes are no longer fragmented, but unified in the presence of God. The city stands as a testament to the fulfillment of all promises, a place where the covenant is fully realized. In this eternal kingdom, the legacy of the tribes is preserved, not as isolated entities, but as an integrated whole reflecting God's glory. This final vision reminds believers that the story of the tribes is not just history, but a prophetic promise, awaiting its culmination in the timeless unity of heaven and earth. The story of Jacob and the 12 tribes is not just about history, it's about legacy and the choices we make today. If this story inspired you, share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of Jacob's journey resonates most with you? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more captivating stories, and share it with someone who loves exploring ancient wisdom that still speaks to us today.